Great. So welcome to our first of our StackUp reboot. I'm Charlie O'Donnell from Brooklyn Bridge Ventures, and I have Jason here from Justworks, who makes all of the customer magic happen. And I say that with a smile because I'm a happy Justworks customer and have been for a while. And you run sort of all of the aspects of the customer-facing interaction, and we'll go a little deeper into which sort of segments that groups into. And you're going to share with us kind of a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me today, Charlie. I'm a big fan, and thanks for being a customer too.
Cool. All right, I'll give you the full screen because no one needs to see me watching.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me again. Some pre-questions came in that I wanted to run through, and then obviously welcome questions from the audience. One thing that Charlie and team asked me to cover is how our team at Justworks is set up. And I think when you set up a customer success team, you really have to tailor it to the business that you're in and the customer base that you have. And I previously was at Indeed, the job site, before I went to Justworks, and I think some of my best practices from Indeed ported over really well, but they don't all port over because the business is different, the customer base is different. So at Justworks, I have some of my main pillars of my teams. One is a 24/7, 365 support team. I really consider that the foundation of everything that we do. And this is your omnichannel, inbound, high volume type team. And we've really emphasized omnichannel because of our subject matter, which is pay and benefits. I think if you're in a different industry or a different space, the channels that you use might be different. You might rely on phone only or chat only or email only. But for us, because we're supporting owners like Charlie, but also employees and members who have regular questions about their pay and their benefits, omnichannel made a lot of sense for us. And so when I talk about omnichannel, it's email, phone, live chat, SMS, Slack are the big ones. I don't think I missed any. And that kind of evolved over time. When I inherited the team, it was phone, email, and chat. And then we started expanding out the channels quite a bit, which has been exciting, adding SMS a couple years ago, and then taking the team 24/7 in late 2017. And that was really a concerted effort on our part. No other provider in our space was 24/7, and we felt like it was a big differentiator. And similar to the omnichannel decision, it was about if an owner has a pay issue and it's late at night or on a weekend, you want that person to be able to get in touch with someone, or if a member is having challenges with benefits and is at the hospital or the pharmacy, you want them to be able to get in touch with someone. So it makes a lot of sense for our business. I've talked to other heads of customer success or customer support since we did that, and it's not the best fit for everybody, but it was a good fit for us. The other thing that I think we did that was unique there for the support team was we built it strictly in New York. So Justworks is headquartered in New York. All of our employees are in New York. And when we decided to go 24/7 with support, I think there were really good questions about, do you outsource it? Do you hire people in other time zones? And our feeling was we really want this to feel like these members, even though they work overnight, these employees, even though they work overnight, that they're a member of the team, they're part of the team, they can go to training, they can go to the holiday party, those types of things. And so we built the team exclusively in New York, which was another wrinkle and another challenge, but I think there's all different types of employees in New York, and so it worked well for us. I don't know if it would work in every market. So that's our support group. Love them to death. I'm super proud of them. It's a tough job, quite a bit, but they do a nice job. So that's sort of the foundation. Then we have a customer onboarding group, which I think this is one of these teams where like it works in some businesses and it's not needed in others. It really depends on the software that you're supporting. But so customer onboarding for us is working closely with the sales team as they close new business. When the new business comes in, it gets handed off to the customer onboarding team, and they take it all the way to first payroll, which is where we consider the customer to be live on Justworks. And they work through getting everyone added to the system, getting everything from benefits and pay entered correctly, answering tons of questions for new customers, as I'm sure you can imagine. And I never had this function before. We didn't really have it at Indeed because Indeed was meant to be more self-serve, like you manage your own account or you have someone who manages your account. So this was a new concept for me. The team I inherited at JustWorks didn't have customer onboarding, but it was sort of in development. And it was pretty clear that we needed it because account managers who are our long-term brand owners, who I'll talk about in a minute, they were onboarding their own new accounts. So every day they had to make a decision of like, do I spend time supporting this customer who's brand new, or do I spend time supporting this customer who has been with us for a while? And just naturally, as I'm sure you can imagine, all of the energy sort of gets moved to the new customers because they're time bound. They have to go live by a certain date. They have to get their people paid and get them benefits. And so the existing customers sort of were falling by the wayside, not because we wanted to ignore them, but because it's sort of where the energy naturally flowed. And so it was really important for us to break off this specific team. In some businesses, it's called implementation or implementation engineers or those types of folks. We call it customer onboarding. And so that's like an interesting job because it's kind of discrete, right? It's like time bound. So you get the new business from sales, you get it to first payroll, and then it kind of goes away, and then you get a new set of customers. And so when we hire for onboarding, we think a lot about project management skills as well as servicing skills. Because there's a lot to do there, from managing tasks and a lot of time-bound activities that don't really exist like anywhere else in the business. So it's an interesting group, great group. So that's another function. As I mentioned, our long-term brand owners are account managers. For us, account management, I know in some businesses that's a sales job or a growth job or a quota-based job. For us, it's really a servicing gig. With our product, once you're on JustWorks, you're either on it or you're not. We don't currently have tons of upsell or cross-sell opportunities. And so the focus really is retention. Keep customers happy, keep them on the platform. And so they work with mostly the brand owners to make sure that, or they are the brand owners working closely with administrators and the business owners to make sure that all their questions are answered as we go through major milestones like tax season or employee open enrollment, which we do every year for health insurance, that they have what they need, that they feel supported, that they look heroic within their companies, that they chose JustWorks and have JustWorks. So that's our account management group. They're awesome. Again, really taking care of the customer every single day. So those are our three big pillars. About 3 years ago, we added a specialty group called HR Consulting. And for anyone who's in the audience who's thinking about segmentation or specialization, this was a great exercise for us to take one part of what we did, which was HR guidance and HR support, and break it off into its own thing and really hire specialists to work on it exclusively. And it's been a great success for us. It's still a small group. I think it's 7 people today, but they focus just on HR topics, just on HR guidance. And so if an inbound question comes in and maybe the support team is taking it or the account management team is taking it, but it's more about HR topics, maybe employee relations or potential harassment or discrimination case or a leave question, which there's a lot of those now with states launching paid leaves, that will get pushed over to that group, and they focus exclusively on those types of topics, and they take it all the way to completion. So it's a really great example of segmentation, which I'm a fan of, and it's probably our best example of that. We want to take that model and like keep blowing that out. So finding things where we can specialize and focusing there. And it's been interesting to hire into that group too, I think, because we hire former HR people, HR generalists, HR managers from companies where they were in-house HR people, and they want to have a different experience and expand their reach. What's interesting when you're in-house HR, you sort of only see the company that you're at, right? And by moving into a role like the one that we have, we call them HR consultants, you can see all of our different customers, and we have customers of all different sizes and in different industries and different locales, and so that's been really a fascinating exercise for us. So a big fan of that team too. And then we have a bunch of internal facing teams, as I'm sure you can imagine, a training team, a product support team that liaises with our product and engineering groups. We have a QA function, which makes sure that the emails that we're sending out to customers and the calls that we're having are high quality and there's no knowledge gaps there. And then we also have a floor coaching group, which is an interesting role that I wanted to share with you all because in a traditional call center environment, the floor coach is like a common role. It's basically someone who roams the floor when that was a thing still, I guess, pre-pandemic, and could just help anybody who needs help, right? Like if a rep is on a call and they're having trouble, they could raise their hand or raise a flag or press a button, and then a coach would come over. We took that approach, but applied it a little bit differently, where it's for the whole team. So not just the support team, but anyone can get help from a floor coach. Even I get help from floor coaches when I run into a tough topic. And so really enjoyed that, especially I think for our business where the subject matter is complex. It's been a good role to have. So I share that with a lot of folks in the CS space because I think it's like something that's existed for a long time, but in a very specific kind of function like call centers. But blowing it out into like a bigger responsibility has been really good for us. So that's the team setup. I hope that's helpful for everybody. It's been a fun adventure to put it all together. Again, I inherited some of it, but have sort of refined it over time in the last 4 years since I've been at the company. And the team's about 165 people today. Again, all based in New York, mostly in our office when we're in the office. Hopefully we'll be back there soon. And then our overnight folks work from home. So another good question was, what tools do you use? I'm a big tools person. I love talking about servicing tools and what's out there. We've come a long way in this regard, and I also love like hearing about new tools, so please let me know if there's anything that you all like. We've tried to unify around Zendesk. I don't know what everyone on the call is using, but I'm a fan of Zendesk. We started out on a different platform, but then we were using a lot of disparate tools. So we were in one ticketing system, we were in a separate phone system, and we were in a separate chat system at the time. And what we found is that reps and employees had to bounce around a lot to do their day-to-day work, and it wasn't too efficient. And so 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, I think our contract just renewed last month. About 2 years ago, we pursued Zendesk and have felt really good about it. I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, no servicing tool is perfect, but it's allowed us to unify around almost one platform. We're not quite there yet, but almost one. So we still have phone separate. So we use TalkDesk for phone. I don't know what everybody's using for phone, but we use TalkDesk. TalkDesk integrates tightly with Zendesk, which is nice. So when a call comes in, creates a Zendesk ticket, could put notes in the ticket, know that the call happened without having to go to TalkDesk, but technically it's a separate system. Zendesk does have a phone product, but for us, it hasn't been sophisticated enough to move off of TalkDesk. So there we still have the two systems, but for everything else, we're using Zendesk exclusively. So email, SMS, chat, everything is there. And then for our Slack support, which we do, we have a public Slack instance, which I meet with Slack regularly, and they're like, we think you're one of the only companies who's ever done this. We have a public Slack instance where anyone can go and ask questions, literally anyone. So if you're a customer, if you're a prospect, if you're a vendor, if you're a member on the platform, anybody can go get help via this Slack instance. And we struggled for a long time to get that integrated because just nobody's using Slack that way. And we ended up doing a custom development with a developer to integrate that with Zendesk. So sometimes you have to go beyond the tools that are out there. So we're almost completely unified on Zendesk, which I'm pretty happy about. Happy to answer tools questions too, so I love tools topics. Another pre-question which I really liked, what's a process that I've put in place and one that I found particularly effective but wasn't really obvious? I thought about this one a lot. This is a good question, Charlie. For me, I think it's around hiring. I think one thing we really pivoted at Justworks has been CS hiring and focusing more on personality and caring streak than previous experience. I think historically when I had done CS hiring, you look at a resume and you see, okay, did they do the same job before? And then you say, okay, well, that means they're able to do it here. And one thing I found at Justworks, and I think, again, subject matter has an impact, is we really wanted people who could show a lot of empathy, who could show a lot of humanity, could be themselves in their jobs, and really support customers with a lot of care. And one thing we were finding was that how do you interview for care, right? It's really hard. It's not going to be in someone's resume as a bullet point that they're a caring person. And so really shifted our interviewing techniques and approach to be more about that caring streak and empathy side than the skill side. Because we talk about brilliant jerks a lot in our business, like they're perfect at the gig, but they don't take care of other people. They don't show their humanity. They don't show empathy. And that sort of doesn't work with our subject matter, because pay and benefits are like two of the most personal things to people, like in your life, right? And so if you do need help with it, you want to feel like, okay, this person is here to take care of me. And so we really pivoted our hiring to focus on that. And we sort of like threw out skills and experience. I mean, certainly if somebody has a strong caring streak and they've done the job before, that's like a, icing on the gravy, on the cherry on top, like whatever phrase you like to use. But we don't stress out about skills. And what's been cool about that is we have this group of people when, if you look at it from the outside, you're like, what the heck did you do, Jason? Like, where did you find this group, this sort of ragtag group? But what brings them all together is this thread of like high care, high EQ, high empathy streak. But their backgrounds are all over the place, right? So we have people who were in the military, people who were pre-med, someone who ran a yoga studio, someone who was doing genetic research. It's like all over the place. But what brings them together is this humanity, which I really love. And I think a lot of teams, a lot of leaders in the space are thinking about like, well, how do I hire a diverse team, right? We sort of did it by accident. Like we didn't think about quotas as much or like trying to bring in a certain ethnicity or gender balance or whatever. We just said like, let's look for caring streak. Let's not worry about experience or skills. And the result was like a very diverse team and diversity across the board, the traditional metrics, but also diversity of thought, diversity of experience. So it's been really cool. So I'm really proud of that. And I think it's not obvious. Usually when I share that, there's some surprise with that approach. So pretty proud of that. There was a question about measuring success. I think like, how do we measure success? I think I've taken a funky approach here too. And I would love feedback on it, of course, but I really try to just look at what is the end goal for us from a servicing perspective. What are we trying to do? And for me, it's, again, showing our humanity, making customers feel cared for, and like we are putting ourselves in their shoes and we're there for them. We have their back. We use that a lot in our marketing materials, but it's true, like we have their back. And so how do you do that? So you don't really do that by focusing on how many calls did you make today? How much time did you spend on the phone today? How many outbound touches or interactions did you have, which are traditional servicing metrics. So we've sort of pivoted away from those and focused mostly on just what's the end goal that we want. So we want happy customers who stay. We want the Charlie O'Donnells who own a business and stay on JustWorks for a really long time and grow and feel good and build teams and those types of things. And so for us, it's about customer satisfaction, which we measure through NPS. And we can argue all day about how NPS is a good or bad or flawed metric. It's definitely flawed, but we use it. And then retention, our customers staying. And I sort of give the team the freedom to say, however you want to get there, like get there. Like if you want to do, which again, right now we can't do, but if you want to do in-person visits with your customers, great. If you want to do Zoom calls, great. If you want to do an email campaign, a calling campaign, however you want to do it, as long as like you see that end goal and you're pursuing that end goal, that's fine. And so we don't overprescribe how people do what they do. We certainly look at productivity metrics. Obviously, if somebody has 0 customer interactions in a day, we're going to look at that. But we don't obsess over it. And I think it's been good for us. So you sort of give people the freedom to be themselves, the freedom to be who they are and like bring their whole self to work, not use call scripts, not have like overly prescribed metrics, but see, this is the vision. We want happy customers who stay. Like, how do we get there? And you can be yourself in achieving that. And I think it's worked. I think it's worked pretty well. Again, it's not perfect, but I think it's worked pretty well. And then last pre-question, and I think we're coming up on the more live Q&A, was what's changed over time in how I work? It's an awesome question, a lot. I think back in the day, in the earlier days of my career, like I spent my whole time in the weeds, right? Answering customer questions, building out tools, configuring tools, like sort of living like very deep in the weeds. And while I still love the weeds, I think many team members of mine who are on this today will confirm I still love the weeds. I try to like not spend as much time there and give the team the autonomy to explore solutions, ideas, new tools, whatever it is, and come to conclusions on their own. And for me, sort of act more as a consultant to support them. So somebody brings me a problem, instead of saying, you should do this, like you should give this kind of refund, or you should give them this kind of solution, saying, what do you think? And how would you tackle it? And yeah, I think that's a good idea. Or did you think about this, that like maybe this would retain them longer, or maybe this would make them happier, or this isn't exactly what they're asking for. Even today, like I worked on a situation with one of our account managers, and she gave me this whole story of something that happened to the customer and how she wanted to help them. And I was like, that's good, but like, did you consider this? And so I think just trying to step back a little bit, still enjoying the weeds, but not being like too immersed in the weeds, and acting more as like a consulting force for the team and less of a like prescribed, like this is how you must act, this is how we must do what we do, and just giving them that general guidance of like, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is how we do it by bringing humanity to the job, and then just letting it go from there. And so I think it's worked pretty well. Again, not perfect, but pretty happy with it. So I think we're at 10 minutes out, Charlie. So hopefully that was helpful for everybody.
Yeah, no, that was great. I have a question, and then there's an audience question, and I'll invite anyone who wants to come up and ask live, feel free, or you could use the little ask a question thing at the bottom here. A lot of times the customer service, customer-facing folks deal with some people who are frustrated, right? And especially when it comes to dealing with benefits and all of this personal stuff, they might get the brunt of some particularly difficult folks. So one is, have you put in processes to deal with difficult customers, right? Employee abuse from your own customer, right? And it's a hard trade-off because somebody could be paying you a lot of money, but that doesn't give them the right to, push people around. But also just even to check in with that team. And I think, we've seen over the last little while, a lot of startups, maybe not put a lot of thought and effort into that until it kind of builds up and people realize that there's sort of, emotional or mental health issues because they've just been dealing with this customer onslaught. Yep.
It's a great question. I think it's so timely right now too. We're actually literally right now, working on our anti-abuse policy and sort of decision tree for how we handle those things. You're right. I mean, because of our subject matter, I think there's definitely more likelihood of being yelled at or getting a frustrated customer than if we were supporting, I don't know, Zoom or Facebook or some other thing. Right. And so, yeah, we've been building that out. I always felt like we had being totally transparent, I always felt like we had a good path that any employee, if they were mistreated, could speak up and their manager could do something about it. I actually remember my first week at JustWorks, Isaac, who's our CEO, who some of you know, I know you know him well, said like, no customer can ever abuse an employee, period. And that my first week, we had a customer who swore at an account manager, and Isaac was like, just fire them. And I was like, well, hold on, that's a bit extreme. Like, let me just have a conversation. So I called this, I knew almost nothing about the business. Called this business owner and was like, you can't swear at my employees. And if you do, like, we're going to ask you to leave. And so I guess inherent in that was like a decision tree of like, okay, first time is a warning, second time is termination. And I thought we were good, but recently my team was like, it's not good enough, Jason. Like, we need a clearer policy, and especially for managers, because I think managers are often asked to handle these situations. Right. And they didn't have a great North Star to say like, can I fire a customer? When do I fire a customer? Can I reassign an account to another account manager? Do I have to? And so I think we just got big enough where we needed something on paper. And so it's literally like out for comment now to my team. And so I wrote something with help of some of my direct reports, and we put it out for comment. And so I'm seeing what comes back. But yeah, I think it's time for us to have that.
Gotcha. Cool. I'm going to invite Ross to see if he wants to come up and ask his question. I don't know if there's actually a decline feature. He's been invited, but I think that might be a polite decline. But I'll ask his question on his behalf. So the question is, how's training? Oh,
here he is. Hey,
here I am. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Ross.
Hey, yeah. I come from similar background, running support teams, and like a thing specifically kind of for us, like we've been running into just trouble figuring out how to rework our training and onboarding during that was not, remote, and now into something where a lot of us are just having to adapt and figure it out. Wondering what kind of, things you've implemented or had to change, and how training is looking like for you.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've done a handful of fully remote start classes now since the pandemic, and actually even before the pandemic, because we unfortunately had an office flood earlier this year. Pre-pandemic, we've had an interestingly rough year. So we've done a few of those. Yeah, we were somewhat blessed, I think, because with our overnight team, we committed to putting all of our trainings in a learning management system. When we started the 24/7 365 group back in 2017, because they just will never be in the office for a live training, right? It just will literally never happen. And so we made a commitment to put everything into an LMS then. And so when we went remote, I think it was a little bit easier for us. But I still think there's challenges, right? If you have a big start class, it's way easier for people to hide, because I think in a classroom setting or like a conference room setting, the trainers are really good at saying, okay, this person's not paying attention, or this person's on their phone, or this person isn't asking questions. It's tougher on Zoom to bounce around to all the different little face boxes and do that. So that's, I think, a challenge. So we did have to sort of redo our approach to onboarding. But I think from the actual curriculum standpoint, we were lucky because we had it all electronic. We had it all in our LMS. So we were blessed there. But I think it was more about trainer approaches and trainer behavior. We also are trying to avoid single person start classes, because I think in the past, if you were in an office, that person sort of could go to the floor and have social interactions. But when you're remote and you are not starting with anybody else, you can feel very much on an island. And so we're trying to avoid that, although we actually just had one. But so we're just being very careful about that. And if we do it, making sure we find a lot of connections for this person, coffee meetups and coffee Zooms, and ways for them to integrate with the team that you would have normally in an office, but you don't have remote. So that's what we've been up to.
Great.
How about you? Would you have any best practices or learnings?
We've been toying around with kind of we don't have an LMS, unfortunately, so it's very much just modules built out in different decks. But we've experimented with separate monitors with cameras that are constantly on, which is a strain on computers, but treating it like a virtual window into an office, to make it really feel you are sitting next to somebody, but really it's just a Zoom screen with everyone on there. But it's met its match sometimes with computer power and having a bunch of tabs open and whatnot. So
right.
Yeah. Hey, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ross.
I have another question that came in.
Sure.
You mentioned that your team, because you were sort of trying to figure out traits rather than skills, and you have a pretty diverse team. But as you've hired this team now, have any particular backgrounds stood out as being adept at this, or previous experience where now you're kind of leaning into oh, we should find more people who run yoga studios, or whatever the background is?
Yeah, I've been asked that before. I think a couple that I like, but I wouldn't say they're exclusively the best. But we have a handful of former teachers, and they're just so strong on the phone, so strong with our content. I actually listened to a call from one of them the other day, and I was like, man, she's just so amazing on the phone. So because they're used to presenting, they're used to talking in front of rooms, they're used to educating and supporting people, and so I that profile has been great for us. So that one's been good. And then we have a lot of folks who came from social work, opioid addiction counseling, again, where the role was supporting other people. And that just flows so nicely into what we do, dealing with some tough subject matter, sometimes, as you mentioned, helping people through challenging moments with pay and benefits. So that background has been good. So those two come to mind, but we try to stay super open. I worry about even just focusing too much on those, and really, again, trying to root ourselves at that caring streak level. But those are two that come to mind where we've seen some consistency and some folks from those backgrounds, doing well.
Gotcha. Cool. Listen, thanks so much for joining us for lunch today. Really, really appreciate it. This is super, super useful stuff.
Awesome.
And And as a customer, keep up the great work.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks again for having me. Thanks for everybody who attended today.
All right. Thanks a lot.
See you. Bye-bye.